Today on Let Them Talk TV, the story of Chinese Pidgin English, a variety of English spoken in the 18th and 19th centuries along the Pearl River Delta, Guangzhou, formerly known as Canton, Hong Kong, as well as Shanghai and other treaty ports during the colonial era. It's a curious mix of mostly English words with Chinese grammar and could be written using the Latin alphabet or phonetically with Chinese characters. We're going to look at its rise, its fall, its legacy, and of course, you'll learn how to speak it. It's truly fascinating and you won't want to miss this, so stay tuned. Hello friends, I've got a book coming out soon all about the history of English idioms told through stories. Find out more and get the first chapter free, link in the description. What place you go? Chinese Pidgin English was a trade language. It's one of the first attested Pidgin languages. Indeed, the word Pidgin itself is from Chinese Pidgin English. It's a corruption of the English word business. When Chinese merchants tried to say the word business, it often came out as pidgin due to the phonetic constraints of the language. He got too muchy pidgin. In other words, he says he's too busy. So Chinese Pidgin English is literally Chinese business English. Chinese Pidgin English, I'll call it CPE from now on, is now extinct, but has provided a number of words into standard English. Let me just give you one example for now. Have you ever wondered why chopsticks are called chopsticks, even though they don't chop anything? In most other European languages, they have a more literal meaning. Something like little sticks. French des baguettes, Spanish palillos, Polish
pałeczki do jedzenia.
Little eating sticks. And English is different because the word comes from Chinese, albeit via CPE. Chop is a corruption of the Cantonese, meaning fast. So they're actually fast sticks. Before we continue, there is a lot of confusion about the term. And just to be clear, Pidgin English is not Chinglish. They are not the same. Chinglish is simply a term used to describe broken English spoken by a native Chinese speaker. Because the languages are so different, a non-fluent speaker may sometimes translate literally from Chinese into English, often with bizarrely humorous results. And here are a few examples of Chinglish, and that may require a video of its own, but this is not what I'm talking about today. CPE, on the other hand, as we'll see, had clearly defined grammar, vocabulary and pronunciation, and it was spoken not only by Chinese but also by native English speakers and other Europeans. But how did it come about, and why didn't the Chinese simply learn English or the Europeans Chinese? For that, we need to look at its history. The Qing dynasty, European colonialism, tea, silk, opium and tofu. Before the English came the Portuguese. Between 1557, when Macau was officially established as their trading post, until the 17th century, they had a virtual monopoly of Chinese, European trade, as well as Chinese-Japanese trade, because for over a century, the Chinese forbade direct trade with Japan, so it went through Macau. From there to the Japanese port of Nagasaki, which had been leased to the Portuguese in a similar way to Macau. The Portuguese took Chinese silk from Macau to Nagasaki and returned with Japanese silver. Meanwhile, Europeans from any country conducting business in China would sail on a Portuguese vessel to Macau. So before English speakers arrived, those Chinese or Japanese wishing to trade with the outside world would have learnt some Portuguese. For this reason, Japanese has a number of loan words from Portuguese from this period, including tobacco, tempura, and Zabon is from Portuguese Zamboa, and it means in English pomelo. The Chinese language doesn't tend to borrow words in the same manner. Rather, they find a Chinese translation. However, there are phrasebooks of the era where Portuguese words were written phonetically using Chinese characters to help traders. So possibly there was a form of Pidgin Portuguese before Pidgin English. By the 1600s, other European powers were becoming envious of Portuguese dominance and wanted a share of the trade, including the Dutch. The rivalry culminated in the Battle of Macau, fought between the Dutch and the Portuguese in 1622. Despite their superior numbers, the Dutch were defeated. Changing strategy, the Dutch East India Company established a colony in Formosa, now Taiwan, in order to facilitate trade with both Japan and Ming Dynasty China. Now, the English were not oblivious to the devious machinations of their European rivals. They too wanted a share of the juicy gains of Far Eastern trades. The first attempt was made in 1637 when an Englishman, John Weddell, sailed to Macau and hoisted an English flag there. A skirmish ensued with the Chinese, who kicked them out. The English officially started trading with China in 1699, when the British East India Company established its first permanent trading post in Canton, now Guangzhou. Chinese Pidgin English is first attested around 1715 in the Canton region. In the 17th and 18th centuries, things gradually loosened up a little. The Dutch and later the English got a foothold in China. But even then, the Qing dynasty strictly regulated trade to restrict foreign influence. The rules were formalised in 1757 under the Canton system, which lasted until 1842. Under this system, all foreign trade had to be conducted from the port of Canton. There was a class of Chinese merchants known as the Kohong, who were licensed by the Qing authorities to conduct foreign trade. Kohong in Chinese means ocean traders or overseas traders. Foreigners, except merchants, were only allowed to reside in China during the trading season, which lasted from April to September. Outside those months, they could stay in Macau, in a staging post in another part of Asia, or return to Europe. So the British were trading in Canton and they needed to communicate with the Chinese. Why didn't they simply learn Chinese? Well, to say that the Qing authorities were suspicious of foreign influence would be an understatement. Teaching Chinese or interpreting for a foreigner could be viewed as colluding with a foreign power, a serious crime. And in 1759, we got a hint of that with the James Flint Affair. James Flint, a British merchant, petitioned the emperor directly to allow trade at Tianjin rather than Canton. For this breach of protocol and for employing two Chinese merchants to help him write the petition in Chinese, the two Chinese helpers, Liu Yabian and Lin Huan, were executed, and Flint was imprisoned for 3 years before being expelled from the country. So, not surprisingly, in the midst of that kind of environment, after 1759, the Chinese were more than a little reluctant to teach Chinese to foreigners. Side note here, if you are American, you might recognize this dude. His name is Benjamin Franklin. James Flint wrote a letter to Benjamin Franklin explaining how the Chinese converted soybeans into tofu. Franklin found this very interesting. He was experimenting with vegetarianism and was in London at the time. So he then sent some soybeans, which he called gavraches, to a friend in Philadelphia. So today, Benjamin Franklin is principally remembered for introducing tofu to America. although I do believe he also played a role in the American Revolution. Is that right? Well, let us know in the comments. The British then were buying large quantities of Chinese goods such as tea, silk and porcelain, known as China, and this led to a huge trade imbalance because China imported very little from Britain. As Britain paid for much of its China trade in silver, large amounts of silver flowed out of the country, depleting its reserves. To address this imbalance, British merchants thought, we got lots of opium in India. Let's sell it to the Chinese. What a splendid idea. No moral dilemmas there then. Now, as I'm sure you know, opium is an addictive substance, and the Qing dynasty saw the harm it was doing and tried to suppress the trade. They attempted to crack down on the illegal opium trade. In 1839, Commissioner Z seized and destroyed 20,000 chests of British opium, which irked the Brits more than a little. How dare you destroy our opium? That's just not cricket, old bean. And so began the First Opium War, which, to cut a long story short, the British won. And in the treaty that followed, Britain was granted Hong Kong. In addition, the ports of Xiamen, Fuzhou, Ningpo and Shanghai were opened up to foreign trade. Consequently, after 1842, Chinese Pidgin English spread to these areas too. Because of the restrictions in learning and teaching Chinese and the need for effective communication for the British and other Westerners and Chinese, CPE emerged. Who spoke CPE? And anywhere where Westerners and native Chinese converged, CPE would be useful. On the Chinese side, the Kohong, Chinese merchants, as we mentioned earlier, and their staff, shopkeepers in the ports and trade cities, dock workers and unskilled workers known as coolies. The word coolie probably comes from a Tamil term for wages, though that's disputed. And nowadays the term is offensive in English. The domestic servants working for foreigners, street vendors, tailors, porters, hawkers, laundry workers, you get the idea. On the foreign side, it would have been spoken by the ship crews, merchants, diplomats, and colonial administrators and missionaries. In this environment, the language flourished. Let's look at the language and learn how to speak it. Basically, what it is mostly English words which are forced to conform to the grammatical rules and sentence structure of the Chinese language and follow Chinese pronunciation patterns. Linguists would describe it as having a Cantonese or Chinese substrate. It's English twisted out of shape by Chinese grammar and with sounds that can easily be uttered by a Chinese speaker and can be written in Latin script or Chinese characters phonetically, for the Chinese, of course. The sources for the language are phrase books from the era, memoirs, travelogues, and other texts from Westerners. And I'm going to recreate a conversation using phrases from an 1860 phrase book written with a Chinese title, here it is, which Google Translate tells me means English language notes. It's a sketch between a Western buyer and a Chinese merchant. And all I've done is just rearrange them to construct a conversation. Just to indicate that I'm the Chinese merchant, I'll hold up this Chinese cup. And to indicate that I'm the British trader, I'll use this British mug. Ah, long time no see. Where you go? I wait long time, you no come. I no see you. Along, you took idle wordsy. What new cargo still you hap? Tea, petticoat, button? No want old cargo. Shoe, booty. Just now, no want. Do you want new silk? This is silky, no good. You got more better, thisy? Best quality, so fashion. This cargo very cheap. You want how much? You took pricey. $500. I want little cheap. You can what pricey? $450. $250. No can do. You want cheap? Go by other man. Add more pricey. $400. $350. You pay pricey very little. Can do. Pay credity? No ready money, I no sell. Ready money, 1/2. Can do. What time pay me money? Tomorrow we can make all right. Shake hand? Shake hand. That was fun. And just a point about the grammar, there's usually no past or future tense. Everything is in the present. There are no conjugations of verbs, even in the third person singular. So he go rather than he goes. There are no if clauses. So, for example, in the phrase, no ready money, I no sell. Ready money, by the way, is an old term for cash in English. So today you'd say, if you don't pay me in cash, I'm not selling. And there are no plurals. He says shake hand, not shake hands. Remember that there were very different varieties of Chinese Pidgin English. It covered a period of more than 100 years and was mainly found in Cantonese cities such as Canton and Hong Kong, but also in areas where they spoke Mandarin or other Chinese languages such as Shanghai. I imagine if you were British at the time, it must have been strange speaking such a stripped down version of your language. But I think there's some fun to it too. And sometimes one Englishman would humorously embellish an English sentence with a phrase from CPE. And in this way, some CPE entered mainstream English. And I've already mentioned chopsticks at the beginning of this video. And here are a few more. Long time no see, which literally translates the Chinese phrase
好久不见.
We've already seen in the dialogue can do and no can do, meaning I can do it, I can't do it. And I'll give you a modern example. Can you drive me to Cambridge? No can do. The car is broken. Get up, chop chop. We saw chopsticks from the beginning of the video, but we also had chop chop, meaning hurry up, as in chop chop. We're late. And it's also taken from the Cantonese word for fast. You no give he chow chow. You have not fed them. Chow, a slang word for food, and in modern English you could say something like, I'm hungry, let's get some chow. And it's attested in CPE as chow chow in 1795 from the Cantonese chow, to fry, to cook, and it migrated across the Pacific to California by the 1850s, brought over by early Chinese immigrants during the gold rush. The expression lose face is a literal translation of the Chinese
丢人.
and it means to be shamed or dishonored. For example, they clearly failed, but we need to help them exit without losing face. Savvy, as in to be knowledgeable, as in I don't know how to do it, ask Bob, he's very tech savvy. There's some evidence to suggest it derives from the Portuguese saber, meaning to know. It's first attested according to the OED in 1785, and we do have an example of usage from a phrase book of 1862. You savvy pricey go down? In other words, did you know that the prices have gone down? Pidgin, as we've seen, this is a corruption of business, and here's an attested example. You take care, you pigeon. In other words, mind your own business. By the way, this video started out as an article on my free newsletter, The Rambler, link in the description. Whatever happened to CPE? By the end of the 19th century, the use of pidgin was declining. This happened for a number of reasons. Firstly, it was no longer illegal to teach Chinese to foreigners. The 1840 Treaty of Wangjia between China and the US explicitly mentions this. It shall be lawful for officers or citizens of the United States to employ scholars and people of any part of China to teach any of the languages of the empire and to assist in literary labours. And after the 1860s, the Qing dynasty encouraged language learning of foreign languages and of Chinese. So by that time, Westerners could learn Chinese and the Chinese could learn English. Or they could hire interpreters and translators without fear of reprisals from the authorities. Furthermore, CPE had low status among the Chinese. It was spoken mainly by traders, servants, shopkeepers. More affluent Chinese preferred to learn standard English. Port cities such as Hong Kong were modernizing and fast becoming bilingual, with locals speaking both Cantonese and standard English, aided by the fact that English was taught in schools. And over time, the usage of Chinese Pidgin English waned. Nowadays, it's little more than a linguistic footnote. There is strong case for reviving it. Hear me out. I visited China and Taiwan, and you notice that it's just a small elite that speak excellent English, while the vast majority speak none at all. And according to a 2017 survey, only 1% of Chinese had conversational level English. Many Chinese speakers struggle to learn English because it's so different. Chinese English could be a relatively quick and easy solution. After all, its grammar is based on Chinese and it can be written with Chinese characters. So they're already halfway there. I'm sure it'd be very interesting for those who want a quick and easy way of communicating with non-Chinese and those with the ambition and the opportunity to master the language of Shakespeare could continue to do so. For Western visitors to China, it would also be practical. They could speak to all Chinese, the cooks, the taxi drivers, the office workers, and not just the 1%. Learn Chinese by all means if you're going to live there or stay there for a long time, or if that's what you want. But for shorter stays, knowing Pidgin would make far more sense. Of course, I'm well aware you could just use AI to translate, but that's no fun, is it? Chinese Pidgin English eventually died out because it became stigmatized. But from a practical point of view, it made sense as a language that is easy and quick to learn. As an international language, in fact, it makes more sense than Esperanto. It's both Indo-European and Asian at the same time and can be written in Latin or Chinese script. So what do you think of my idea? Should we start speaking Chinese Pidgin English again? Let us know in the comments. If you like this video, then support the channel and get exclusive content on my Patreon. All the links in the description. That's all for now. Bye.